or whether you've been assigned. It's lovely to have you all here this afternoon. My name's Vicky Saywood and I'm here today with my colleague Lorraine, who will introduce herself in a moment. I'm a project manager with Headstart Kent. And I've been working with Headstart for about 4 years or so now, and across the different community settings, but predominantly with a variety of schools in Kent. And whether that be primary or secondary, and across secondary we have a lot of work with mainstream schools. We have a very active grammar school system here in Kent as well. We've been working with special schools, alternative provisions as well, all part of the Headstart Kent programme, looking at implementing and embedding whole school approaches to resilience and wellbeing. So that's been what I've been leading on over the last few years. And before that, I taught for all but 10 years. I was a teacher of modern foreign languages in schools across Kent and England as well, was a head of year and a pastoral lead. So I bring that experience with me to my current role and work with schools and communities. Lorraine, would you like to introduce yourself for everyone?
Yes, hi, I'm Lorraine Griffiths. I'm project manager also at Headstart Kent. Similar role as she's just mentioned. And my background is education for about 10 years prior to this role, working as a pastoral lead in different settings and working with SEND families and children, supporting them with their educational needs. So very varied background. And before that, I was in publishing, so completely different.
Thanks, Lorraine. So Lorraine's going to be sending different links, different information in the chat box today. She's going to be my trusty tech assistant as well if anything doesn't quite work out. So any issues, Lorraine's on hand. So thanks, Lorraine. So just to summarise what we're going to be looking at over the next 20 minutes or so, hopefully this isn't a surprise if you chose this workshop, but we're really going to explore Public Health England's whole school approach principles. You heard them mentioned before from Daniela and Claire during their talks, but we're going to look at it from really the perspective of a school community during the pandemic, during these unprecedented times. And we're going to link that to the current Ofsted inspection framework and also the work that the mental health support teams have been carrying out in Kent. And we also want to share with you the work that has gone on in Kent with a number of partners across the local authority, education psychologists and other partners around putting together some return to school guidance. So this is some signposts and information, and we're particularly going to take a look at some support for staff at this time. So I think it's important just to take a moment to set the scene and acknowledge the situation that school communities find themselves in at the moment. We heard from Daniela earlier about from the DFE about some of the findings from the report you can see a screenshot of at the moment, really focusing on children and young people's mental health and wellbeing during the pandemic. For me, this report highlighted that loneliness has been a challenge for some children and young people, although some children and young people have reported benefits for their mental health. There's some evidence to suggest that young people from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds have experienced a higher rate of mental health and wellbeing concerns, though other studies have not found this to be the case. Parents have reported that children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities have been negatively affected by the pandemic, but measures of emotional and behavioural difficulties do not necessarily show a widening gap with their peers. And in the last few weeks, new reports have been published from the coast-based study from Public Health England and the Evidence-Based Practice Unit. And particularly important is their finding that 2.5 times as many children from low-income households are experiencing emotional and attention difficulties compared to children from higher income backgrounds. And at the same time to all of this, the School for Public Health Research and a research team at the University of Bristol have just published a report on young people's mental health during the COVID-19 pandemic, in which they found overall that there were reductions in anxiety and rises in well-being. Interestingly, they saw larger improvements in mental health and well-being for students who had poor mental health and well-being before the lockdown. Students also reported feeling more connected to school during the lockdown. So we really are living in a very mixed bag of experiences and findings of this pandemic, both personally and professionally. And I'm sure that I know certainly I have found that as well, and I'm sure you will all have your stories to tell. these demands won't necessarily be new information for some of you who are working closely with respective schools. However, it does show that there's never been a more important time to join up strategic thinking around emotional well-being, and so that a whole school approach can really reach everyone across the school community to ensure that their individual needs are met and provide that thread of consistency across everything for our whole well-being in all. So we mentioned this whole school approach. A whole school approach involves all parts of the school working together, committed. It needs partnership working between governors, senior leaders, teachers, and all school staff, as well as parents, carers, and the wider community. You can see on the slide that this whole school approach and the principles are taken from the public health paper that has a really vast evidence base now. It's had a number of years to really be tried and tested. And it's widely recognised that a child's emotional health and wellbeing influences their cognitive development and learning, as well as their physical and social health and their mental wellbeing into adulthood. So supporting schools as a setting to promote emotional health and wellbeing as part of their everyday work really creates a sound foundation for success. So what I'd really be interested in finding out initially is what your awareness is of this approach. You can see the 8 principles on the screen at the moment, going around in the circle. So just take a moment to have a look at each of those principles. This might be something that's very familiar to you, or it might be something that is new and that you're looking to find out a little bit more about. We'll be looking at each of those in a bit more in turn shortly. But for me, the leadership and management in the centre of that wheel is the glue that holds this whole approach together. And adopting such an approach moves beyond teaching and learning to pervade all aspects of the life of a school. It's been found to be effective in bringing about and sustaining health benefits. And so a simple way of thinking about this is not just what children and young people are learning at school, but the experience they have as part of their whole school day. And this has proven to have had positive effects on well-being, attendance and attainment. And that's something here in Kent that we found has been really important to discuss with school leaders when we talk about a whole school approach. Depending on different motivations and different factors, we always share research and public health that has an average an 11% increase in attainment for school settings with a structured approach to resilience and well-being. So, as I say, depending on these motivations, we make sure that that information is known. There's definitely an increase in attendance and attainment as well. So I mentioned a poll. Lorraine is going to put a link in the chat box for you, if she hasn't already, and that link will take you to a Microsoft form. I'd be grateful if you could click on that link and you'll find a question. So as I said, this is really about awareness. I'd be really interested to find out whether you are aware of a whole school or setting approach to wellbeing in your school community. Perhaps you're not based or working with a school, not a problem. What I'd like you to think about is perhaps school or schools that you may be linked to. Perhaps you've worked alongside them. Maybe you are a parent yourself with a school-age child or children. So if this is you, do you ever recall a whole school approach being communicated with you? Are you aware of that terminology? Maybe you are a leader within a school yourself or work across a federation. I really appreciate you choosing one of the options around your awareness of a whole school or setting approach and being aware of the framework. So the options you've got are, yes, this is fully embedded. Yes, we've started implementation. Yes, we have plans to adopt a whole school approach, thinking about it, but not really started implementing anything just yet. D is you're not sure either way. And then E is that it's not something that you are aware of, something that is not on the table right now. So once you have started to vote, I will be able to see some of your responses. So Lorraine, let me know if there's any issues with the link or anything like that. Hopefully you've all got a chance to see that. Thank you everyone. There's been 17 responses so far. And I will share those responses with you. So if you bear with me one moment, I'll just swap over some screens. Okay, so as you can see, I will just refresh one more time because I think some more are coming through. There's a really mixed bag of us together in the room today. We've got, I'd say, well over half of you who are certainly aware of the whole school approach as a framework. You are either linked yourselves or involved in the implementation or fully embedding a whole school approach, and there's a handful of you who are not sure either way. Excuse me. What's really pleasing to see is that nobody has said that it's something that you haven't considered or it's not on the radar at all. So that's great. Thank you for that. And I hope that it gives you an idea of who you're here in the room with as well in terms of awareness. So I'm just going to go back to our slides. Oh, apologies. It's okay. Lorraine, could you just let me know what you can see?
Whole slide, the introduction overview.
Lovely, thank you. So, can you see the information about Ofsted now?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, so this seems a good time to talk about Ofsted, as good a time as any. So the whole school approach and the Ofsted framework that came out last year has been explored quite thoroughly, certainly up until March of this year. There's a document that Lorraine will be able to share with you that really goes through some of the crossover, the clear links between the whole school approach and the most recent Ofsted inspection framework. And I wanted to just share one key quote with you that's mentioned in the framework. The curriculum and the provider's wider work support learners develop their character, including their resilience, confidence and independence, and help them to know how to keep physically and mentally healthy. So this is what inspectors are looking for. They're looking for a curriculum which extends beyond the academic, technical or vocational. They're looking for a positive environment with a culture of anti-bullying and respect, and they're looking for shared values, policies and practice at a senior leadership level. So there's a clear overlap. And what we've found with schools that we've worked with in Kent, certainly up until March of this year, is that there has been much more of an emphasis on well-being as part of inspections across the whole school, whether that be students, parents, and certainly staff. So let's explore some examples of what we're actually looking at in real time when it comes to our whole school approach principles. Leadership and management, teaching, learning and curriculum, enabling student voice and staff development. Hopefully you can see some different examples that you might have and what that might look like on an operational level. SLT is really important at the moment that students know who their mental health first aiders are within their bubbles. It's really important that they might have a member of staff who they used to go and talk to that they can't anymore. It's really important that we have designated mental health and wellbeing policies on the school website and available for staff and for the whole school community in the same way that we would have any other policies. There's an organisation called the Charlie Waller Memorial Trust that have a fantastic template that we have been able to share with many schools in Kent that have adopted this policy as well. Staff have told us that they feel valued when one is in place, so please do have a look if you haven't got one already. When it comes to teaching and learning, it's so important at the moment to use any available time and opportunity to tie in wellbeing. We know how stretched the school day is. We know how much learning has potentially not been caught up on over the time where schools have not been in. However, something like PSHE, which is a legal requirement, needs to include signposting to web-based support, for example, for those who currently cannot or do not feel that they are able to verbalise how they're feeling, perhaps with staff or peers in school. school within their bubbles. There needs to be a member of staff overseeing this, and they need recognised time to be able to explore that and share that learning with those who are delivering PSHE across the school. For me, the role of the form tutor has never been more important, and directed time needs to be there for tutors to plan activities for their tutees, perhaps, for example, around friendships when they see them as part of that tutor time or whatever format the school has. For many of us during this time, we've not been in our normal routines, we've not been in our usual environments, we've perhaps forgotten how to be around each other, how friendships can respond as well. So there's a couple of tools that I'll show you shortly that might support in doing so. Student voice is also something really important it could be something that's happening virtually at the moment, but it needs to be there, and there needs to be opportunities for all members of the school community to take part if they so choose. And staff development, well, anecdotally, we've heard that some staff are really struggling at the moment. Anxiety levels are high for staff and students alike. So being able to self-navigate is really important. Making sure that staff are aware of education support line is really key, making sure that they know they can access support through Headspace with mindfulness techniques for free for educators. One of the things that I wish that I had known about whilst I was teaching was the delay delivery aspect in Outlook, so that emails which are being sent, if you choose to work later in the evening, they're not necessarily sent at that time, or that you can schedule when to send them, so to keep others' well-being in mind. But I'd really like to hear a couple of examples from yourselves, please, in the chat box. Thinking about those 4 particular principles, are you aware of anything that your school or a school that you're linked to that they're doing that has been put in place or that has worked particularly well with regards to benefiting wellbeing since March? Is there something that they've done which you think, yes, that worked really well, that was really beneficial? I'd really appreciate any of suggestions you have. So whilst you do that, I'm just going to share a couple more whilst with the other principles, and then I'll ask Lorraine to come back to you to share some examples if any have been shared. We've got identifying need and monitoring impact of interventions. Working with parents and carers, that's going to look very differently at the moment. Perhaps telephone catch-ups, online catch-ups are needed. Think about the tech that's available for parents. I think there's an assumption sometimes that everyone has got access to be able to talk screen to screen like this, and that might not be the most appropriate way. So it's thinking about other options as well. And it's being able to really link in with targeted support and appropriate referral in a way that we didn't do before. So not everyone's going to be able to come into school. Let's think about other ways around that. And the ethos and environment, give opportunities for students to take ownership of their bubbles and their environment at the moment. It's really important. Lorraine, did we have any examples shared in the chat?
Okay, we've got a few here. We've got staff supervision sessions, offered wellbeing staff, staff meetings online, implementation of anxiety workshops, which I've written. That's from somebody else, not myself, it's written, and wellbeing surveys. So a few ideas there.
Absolutely, and what we'll do is we'll share any other ideas that come through the chat after the workshop today. So I'm going to just briefly tell you that the toolkit that we have used in Kent is available on the Kent Resilience Hub. This website will share the link with you so that you can explore that if you're interested yourself. And I'm going to just pass over to Lorraine now, who's going to tell us a little bit how this has fed into the work in Kent that is already going on with the mental health support teams.
Thanks, Vicky. Okay, so yeah, as Vicky says, we're just going to show some examples of how in Kent we've used the whole school approach and linked that in with our mental health support teams. The mental health support teams was briefly mentioned in the introduction earlier, but for those of you who may not be aware, in 2017, the government published its Green Paper for Transforming Children and Young People's Mental Health, which detailed proposals for expanding access to mental health care for children and young people, which was building on the National NHS Transformation Programme already underway. So MHST's aim is to provide early intervention on some mental health and emotional wellbeing issues, such as the mild to moderate anxiety, as well as helping staff within a school or college setting to provide a whole school approach to mental health and wellbeing. And the teams also act as a link between local children and young people's mental health service and NHS staff. So just to give you a bit of background there. So just a little bit of context, in Kent, we have renamed the mental health support teams, and this was led by our young people of Kent who believed that mental health support teams, having mental health in the title as the name of the team, could put some young people and families off, they felt. And they thought they might feel that some young people and parents might feel that that's maybe for somebody that they feel has a mental health diagnosis, or is more for maybe a child adolescent mental health service. So they wanted to change the name. So we gave them the opportunity to put forward names, and they wrote on their name logo that represented that team, and they came up with emotional wellbeing team. They said emotional wellbeing was better representative of the work they felt the practitioners would be doing. So a real collaborative co-production approach there. So really brilliant input from the young people. So just in case I interchange between emotional wellbeing teams and mental health support teams, they are the same thing. And the practitioners are called education wellbeing practitioners. So just to, in Kent, we have Trailblazer teams, which really helped inform the learning for our Wave 2 and Wave 3 planning, and taking forward some of that learning and information and knowledge has really informed our applications, but also our delivery. So that's really been a really beneficial approach for us in Kent. The Trailblazer teams have been live now for just over 9 months, where they've been qualified, although bearing in mind 6 months of that was in lockdown. So they've been having to be very flexible in their approach and offering different ways of interacting with young people and families. So just going to explain a little bit about how we link the mental health support teams with the Kent whole school approach. So if you've already heard from Vicky, Kent used something called the Resilience Toolkit with our schools. And Headstart Kent have delivered workshops and whole of school approaches for mental health support team schools up till now, and that will continue to happen with the new waves that have come forward. The School Public Health Service, who are commissioned to deliver whole school approach support in Kent using the same resilience toolkit. And they've also attended and supported the mental health support team workshops with schools to ensure we have that consistent approach and consistent language. The schools are then made aware that they have resources on the Resilience Hub, which is the website, which is free to use, and obviously the additional support from Headstart Kent or the School Public Health Service. Finally, I just want to share with you an example of how the teams have responded to the need and the difficulty of not being able to be in schools. They've produced 2 videos which are focused on pupils returning to school after being off for a very long time, with one aimed at primary school age children and one for secondary age pupils. And these videos have helped with the challenges that are faced by the practitioners not being able to deliver this face-to-face. So they're still ensuring they're supporting the pupils in schools as best as they can. The videos have been shown in assemblies and shared online with parents, and they've been really well received with some really very positive feedback. We're hoping to make these videos widely available in the future on the Kent Resilience Hub, so hopefully others will be able to see those. That's it from me, Vicky. Very brief. Hand over to you.
Thanks, Lorraine. So I hope that you can see our Kent Resilience Hub that we've referred to. And the page you can see at the moment is the School Resilience Toolkit, which is what we've referred to. But I just wanted to refer to that return to school guidance. So clicking on the support and resources for COVID-19 at the top here, you'll see that partners came together to provide support in 3 separate segments here. And if I click on support for schools, you'll see there are then further categories that have been put together. I want to show you, I'll just scroll down so you get an idea of some of the different vulnerabilities that we've focused on and some of the different support that's available. I'm going to click on emotional wellbeing support for parents, carers and families just to show you an example brief. And what was really important here that we represented local and national support and a variety of different means of support. So for some parents and carers, we know that they prefer having the option of speaking to someone and a phone line. We know that some prefer text support or being able to chat. We know that some would rather have that face-to-face or telephone or video options. So we've been able to put together, as I say, signposting for a variety of different sources of support for parents and carers. As you can see, everything from domestic abuse support for families generally, through the local authority, for bereavement support. There's a whole another section, but it also links parents and carers into training available for them, mental health support, first aid support and training that they can access for free, or they can download this whole resource if they'd rather not have it step by step here on the website. But I just wanted to show you and hopefully invite you to have a look yourself and see what's available, including support for parents. That's to say separate section there, but also for schools to signpost parents and staff to those sections. So to wrap up, I'll just swap screens back once for the last time. And finish off. Lorraine, can you see which slide can you see, please?
It's the mental health support team slide at the moment.
Excellent, thank you. So I just wanted to share a picture which I have used in many schools recently to get a discussion going around emotional well-being and with staff as well as students. It's really important that staff have an opportunity to have different techniques, perhaps around psychological first aid, having resilience conversations. Whatever technique your school uses, please do explore the Kent Resilience Hub for suggestions around that. But I use this picture for people to really ground themselves and think, where am I at the moment? Where do I want to be? How am I feeling? And being able to pick that number is a really good way of getting the conversation around their well-being going, and to be able to share their needs as well. So we were going to ask you, just using Menti, which is a fantastic tool if you've not heard of it, to sort of use virtually with teams and colleagues as well, to sort of see what you would take away. Apologies, I think we've run out of time and we want to be able to give you a break, but I hope that gives you a whistle-stop tour of some of the work that we've been doing in Kent to support whole school approaches to wellbeing at this time. Our contact details are on the slide, so please do get in touch with any specific questions. And I believe the plan is now for us all to sort of hang up on this workshop, take a break, and then join your second workshop at past. So thank you for listening. We'll come back with any questions, and take care. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you.